The Danganronpa series has so much going for it. A simple and effective premise, interesting murder mysteries with plenty of twists and turns, and of course the amazing trial sequences. But I don't think it would be that controversial for me to say that Danganronpa is its characters. Ultimately, I believe that the franchise would not even be close to as successful and well loved as it is without such amazing casts. Danganronpa's characters feel distinctly its own. I don't think more normal characters from other games or media would fit into these games as well. Similarly, I can't imagine a character like Nagito in anything other than Danganronpa. It just wouldn't feel right. Plenty of people have spoken about and rated these characters, so I'm not exactly being the most original here, but hey, I will find any excuse to rave and rant about these characters. These ratings are of course my own opinion, and I doubt that anyone in the whole Danganronpa fandom has exactly the same opinions as someone else. Saying this, I've tried to also be quite objective. I will be taking into account the actions of the main story, their free time events, their personalities, and just how well-rounded they feel as a character. Final thing I want to say before I get into the ratings is that I will be talking about each of the 3 games separately. Just like I can't see Nagito in any other game or show, I also can't see Nagito in the first game or V3. To me, all the casts feel very specific to their own games. The feel, the plot, the themes, it's all connected with the characters and how they chose to portray them. For example, the themes of truth versus lies is very prevalent in the 3rd game, and it's also woven into each character in a different way, in order to provide a very rounded exploration of these themes. To me, it's much easier to say who my favourite characters are for each game, rather than from the series as a whole, if that makes sense. So, I'll hopefully be doing these videos in between my video essays on each game. Right then, let's get into the characters.
Hi, my name is Trey. I have a basketball game tomorrow. Well, I'm a point guard. I got shoe game.
Before I start hating on these lower placed characters, I just want to say that there is something interesting or something to love about every character in Danganronpa, and I know that any character in these games could possibly be someone's favourite. So if you like the characters I've placed quite low down on the list, feel free to tell me why in the comments. I'd love to be able to experience a character in a new way or from a new perspective. I am, in my writing and in general, a character geek, and love to strip away the layers of character development and understand how the creators make the characters tick. Saying this, I really don't care for Leon.
You can't be serious! I'm not the killer!
Leon just doesn't have much to him. In his defense, he did die very early on, and therefore had hardly any time to develop. But still, he got into Hope's Peak for being the ultimate baseball star, but has absolutely no interest in baseball at all. He's just naturally talented at baseball, he doesn't have to work for it at all, and hates going to practice. While in a game literally about talented people, it would make sense to have someone who doesn't like what he's talented at. But Leon just rubs me up the wrong way. He keeps doing or saying things that give you hope that maybe he's an understandable and sympathetic character. When he starts to talk about his plans to become a rock star, you think, oh, maybe he's alright after all. He has a passion for music and just got dragged into the baseball team. But no, he shows literally no interest in making music or performing. He says he only wants to be a rock star so he can be popular with women. Great. In his free time events, he reveals his plan to become a rock star isn't just to impress girls in general, but to impress one in particular. And you're like, oh, he loves women so much that he would abandon his career in an area that he excels in just to impress her. Wow, he must really love her. Oh no, he just thinks she's hot and wants to get in her pants. And he's not exactly the most loyal to her either, since in another free time event, he asks you whether Sayaka is single or not. When I say that Leon is a selfish idiot, do not for a moment doubt my sincerity. Like, I hate this guy. He is propelled forward by only selfish motives and only cares about himself. This does lead well to him being the first killer, but the whole first case is riddled with his idiocy. How Sayaka was able to lure him to her so easily, how after he got the upper hand, he actively made the decision to break into the bathroom where she was hiding to kill her, and just how lazy he was with the evidence. Like, he didn't wait 2 seconds to check he had got all his bloody clothes in the furnace. He didn't pay enough attention to see Sayaka literally write his name on the wall. 11037 my ass. That shit clearly says Leon. No, Makoto, you idiot, it's not a fucking code, it's Leon! think I need to move on.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
I highly doubt anyone will be mad that Hifumi is near the bottom. Hifumi, like Leon, is also an insufferable pervert, but I've put him above Leon because I think he at least has something that makes him almost bearable. But first, let's complain.
You're presented with the opportunity to check out the girls' locker room.
You absolutely take it!
This guy is so damn annoying. I won't subject you to too much of his voice, mind you. I found myself skimming through his dialogue as fast as possible so I could skip as much of the voice acting as possible. Like, it's good voice acting. I imagine Hifumi would speak like this. It's just that it grates on my ears. Wait, Hifumi has the same voice actor as Kibo? My boy Kibo? What is this witchcraft? Anyways, Hifumi is much more openly perverse than Leon. The game succeeds in making this feel really gross, but when he goes on a horny ramble in the trials, it feels really out of place and annoying. I don't know if you noticed, Hifumi, but your friend is dead. This is not the time to sexualize them, you fucking disgrace. Oh, and his crush/obsession with alter ego made me seriously uncomfortable. His other defining personality trait is his love of anime, manga, and fanfiction. He is the ultimate fanfiction writer, so you would expect him to be very passionate, and he sure is. Most of the time when he rambles on, it's really annoying, which combined with his pervy remarks make him literally the most annoying character I've ever encountered. You might be thinking, well, if he's this bad, why isn't he last? But I have to begrudgingly admit, he has at least a little bit of depth. Hearing about how his discovery of this anime was able to pull him out of a bad time and inspired him to write fanfiction was nice, I guess. And his excitement to write something original so that maybe one day his work can have the same effect on someone else shows that he's not completely self-serving and does have some sort of niceness about him. I also like him ever so slightly more because of how quick he came to Celeste's defense when she told him Taka had tried to attack her. I mean, she was lying, but his outrage at Taka was real. Yeah, sure, he shouldn't have killed him, but at least he thought he was doing the right thing. Side note, for some reason, the way he always addresses everyone by their surnames feels almost endearing. But only almost. I still hate him.
Jared, could you read number 23 for the class? No, I cannot.
What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read.
Hero is the guy who I am the most amazed ever got accepted into this school. Like, even more than the literal murderer fighting machine that is Mukuro, or Makoto, who literally doesn't have a talent. That's like his whole point. Like, real talk. How the fuck did this 21-year-old idiot get into Hope's Peak when his so-called talent of clairvoyancy only has a 30% success rate?
Who are you calling a murderer?
Like, I don't really like or dislike Hero. He just baffles me. He survives to the end, so you'd expect him to be higher on the list. But honestly, when I think about all the surviving characters from the whole series, I always end up forgetting about him. He just seems very flat, and he never really contributes anything to the overall story. I think that, given how long he lasts, I expected more development, or more personality, or more, more something. It feels like he's meant to be some sort of comic relief character, but I don't think I ever really found his antics to be funny. Every now and then, when he would speak for a while, I'd find myself wondering, why are you still alive? One other thing that bothers me about him is how his idiocy almost gets us killed more than once. Like, I understand that he's stupid. That seems to be his only personality trait, actually. But he really frustrated me, especially in the third trial, when he is framed for the murder. All the evidence points to him, and all he can do is be like, I really didn't do it, guys. I don't know what happened. I'm so confused. I mean, when we literally find him inside the suit that's supposedly been attacking people, you as the player immediately know that it's a setup. But holy shit, defend yourself properly, mate, or we will all die. Also, he was the first to attack Sakura in Chapter 4 and try to pin his crime on Toko, so while he's an idiot, he's also a dickhead. Hero mainly annoys me because his appearance is so interesting and ridiculous, and while his personality seems ridiculous, in actuality he's just boring. And as I will get into later, I don't think he should have lived till the end. He stole precious screen time from more deserving characters.
I spilled lipstick in your Valentino bag.
Oh, you spilled lipstick in my Valentino white bag!
I'm just gonna come out and say it. I hate Junko.
So uncool. Your stupid faces, the stupid things you've said, the stupid way you all treat each other. It's all so uncool. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! Ling.
I know some people love her, but I'm obviously not one of those people. Like I said in the intro, I'm trying my best to look at this game on its own. Honestly, if I took into account her reappearance at the end of the second game, as well as her complete overpowered nature in the Danganronpa 3 anime, I would probably put her last. But anyway, let's say some positives. She has a really cool design, and I've seen people cosplay her at a Comic-Con and that looks really good. I actually really like the build up to her reveal as well. I feel like a lot of people dislike the final trials of each game because they end up being really info dumpy, and this first game is a really bad offender of this. But I quite enjoyed the investigation in the first half of the trial, and when she first revealed herself, I thought, wow, I really like the fact that the Junko we'd come to know wasn't Junko at all. And I also liked the idea of the big bad mastermind who was in charge of the whole thing was actually a young blonde girl. Unfortunately, it all went wrong for me when she started talking. She switches through a variety of different personalities and voices because she gets bored with her own personality? Switching from obnoxious voice to obnoxious voice really didn't work for me. I found it extremely distracting and annoying. It felt like they didn't want Junko to come in and info dump everything, so they made like 7 different Junkos come in and info drop everything. My problem with Junko is that I don't see her as a character. I see her as a plot device. To me, it feels like they just threw someone as ridiculous and batshit insane as Junko in at the end to pretty much justify every lingering question. Like, why did she kill her sister? 'Cause she's a crazy bitch. Why and how did she send the world spiraling into chaos? 'Cause she's a crazy bitch. How the fuck did she make and design Monokuma? 'Cause she's a crazy bitch. Why did she not come up with an end to her plan and was happy enough to just die? You get the idea. The last thing I want to mention is something that I do absolutely love to do with Junko. I love how when she agreed to die, she was happy and excited to die in the most ridiculous way. She wanted to feel true despair or whatever. But I love that when she's happily waving at the end, the Crusher thing paused a second. She didn't die in control and happily waving. She died thinking, huh? The fuck is up with this? That tiny moment, I loved, and gave me a real sense that we won after all.
You better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch.
For someone who we literally never see acting as themselves, I kinda like Mukuro.
Are you enjoying yourself now?
Oh yeah, just for the record, I am now getting into the territory of characters that I liked. We've got the completely intolerable ones out of the way. Pretty much the only reason I like Mukuro's character is because of the free time events. I didn't do them playing the game because she died in the first chapter, and since I didn't know that she was Mukuro, I didn't really have that much interest in her. So I did her free time events after knowing that she wasn't Junko, but she was actually Mukuro, and I found them so interesting. They might be some of my favourite free time events. I love exploring them because you've got to try and figure out if she's speaking as Junko or as herself. For example, when she has a rant about how bored she is, it's obvious that she's channeling Junko, but the moments that really interest me is when she seems to be honestly talking about herself. For example, when she expresses doubt about her life and where her career is going. Makoto assumes she's talking about modelling, but you know she's not. I love these little insights into Mukuro and the fact that maybe she was having second thoughts about helping Junko as she got closer to the group. Another side note, I haven't got around to reading any of the extra mini-novel things that Danganronpa gives you. I do have the intention to. I think it's Danganronpa If, that's from the perspective of Mukuro, so I'm very excited to read that. But I knew that if I read it, I'd end up putting Mukuro higher on this list subconsciously, which wouldn't be fair on the other characters who I'm judging purely on this game. So, even though I found Mukuro's free time events fun, and I really loved learning more about her in some of the investigations, it sounds like she's led a very interesting and tough life, being the ultimate soldier. I can't put her higher up because we literally get to spend 0 time with her before Junko kills her for no reason.
No off-topic questions. Because I don't want to. No, permission denied. That's an off-topic questions. Next, you have been stopped.
Celeste is a weird one for me. Like Junko, some people love her, and I absolutely love her design. Just look at those tornado bunches. That's impressive.
Until the game's over, you never know what might happen!
But when it comes to her personality, I'm a bit flip-floppy. Like, some days I really like her, and other days I only kinda like her. When I first wrote this list, she was 2 places higher, but as I started thinking about arguments for the other characters, Celeste ended up dropping a few places. Celeste is a really interesting character though. She's the ultimate gambler, which is really fucking cool. And I loved how proud she is of the people she's defeated, and how smug she is that her opponents often underestimate her then come to regret it. Like, go you! My problems with Celeste mainly pop up in the 3rd case when she's the killer. The mistakes and decisions she makes just seem so unfitting for her character. For this chapter, Celeste had proved herself to be really intelligent and objective. Her speeches about being able to adapt, while they are ruthless, they make sense, you know. The way she is really good at reading people and manipulating people I loved, and I understood how she ended up being a force to be reckoned with in the gambling world. And I really liked how she seems to be lying about a lot. As a gambler, she's always bluffing and lying, so it makes you wonder how much of her personality is a front. Her name obviously is, which gets revealed later. And all these things make her a great character for this first game about suspicion and distrust. However, what the fuck happened in the trial? While her plan was really convoluted and kinda impressive, she was able to manipulate Hifumi into killing Taka, which gave her alibis to his murder, but then went back and killed Hifumi, framing the whole thing on Hiro in the process. But the fact that Hiro is framed is beyond obvious, and when you replay the case, Celeste isn't exactly subtle in how she manipulates the events. Like, oh, I see him over there, oh, he attacked me, oh, Hifumi's dead, woohoo, oh, we should split up. I mean, everything in this case is just so easily explained by the fact that Celeste lied, and I feel like someone with her intellect wouldn't have made these mistakes. And I've not even mentioned her motive. Like, girl, after all these creepy and intelligent speeches about learning to adapt and being sneaky and cool, she just goes, oh yeah, I slapped together this double murder plan so I have enough money to get a castle and fill it with hot men to fulfill my aesthetic. I mean, while killing 2 people for the sake of your aesthetic is fucking cold-blooded, she just executed the whole thing so poorly that I just lost all respect for her character.
Hey, Batman.
What? Fuck. Yup, I knew it. I knew you were Batman. No, it sounded like you said Bruce. It just sounded...
Batman.
What? God! Hey, it's him!
Toko is an asshole and I don't like her.
I'm Toko Fukawa.
Well, that's what I thought after playing only the first game at least. She was the perfect choice for being a main character in Ultra Despair Girls, and if I was taking that game into account, she would be much higher, as I really loved her development in that game, and I am in love with her relationship with Kamaru. If anyone tries to tell me that they are not a couple, I will fight you. But I'm not taking that game into account here, and in this game, Toko sucks. As a person, not as a character. If she sucks as a character as well, she'd be very close to the bottom. Toko is well characterised, I'll give her that. She's a very strange mix of self-hatred and hatred of others, which means she's just a complete asshole to anyone. She just presumes that everyone hates her and thinks she's disgusting, hence her very accusatory introduction to Makoto. She is a successful romance novelist, and thus has a very particular and purist view of romance. She slut-shames the other female characters and insults all the males, apart from Byakuya, of course, who she is obsessed with to a seriously creepy degree. She doesn't do much for the story, and doesn't change at all during the whole game, even though she is one of the ones who lives until the end. But her character is dramatically improved and explained by the addition of Genocide Jill. Toko has DID, and her other personality seems to be the complete opposite of Toko. Genocide Jill is a notorious serial killer, and she is absolutely dripping in personality and charisma. Genocide Jill is a far more interesting character in the trials, and I did occasionally find her ridiculousness funny. Like, she calls Makoto Big Mac, and I cannot express how much I love this. Knowing that she switches to Genocide Jill has clearly had a huge impact on Toko's mental health. It's probably the cause of her self-hatred. It's probably what made her such a shut-in, and thus causing her horrendous social skills. So all of Toko's suckiness does make sense. Unfortunately, Toko's character wasn't really explored enough like this, and they ended up settling on the crutch of her obsession with Byakuya as a cheap gag. She ends up being defined as creep and not much else, which is why I was so happy to see her Byakuya-less in Ultra Despair Girls, where her character could shine and develop perfectly.
That moment when you enter a room and forget why you went in there. What you say? Oh, that's right, I was getting chased by a serial killer.
Now, I know that Sayaka was literally the first person to die, and I know that when she was alive I didn't really think much of her, but I really like Sayaka.
I'm Sayaka Mizono. I look forward to getting to know you.
Firstly, I love the bait and switch the game does with Sayaka and mystery and detective story tropes. Before she dies, Makoto is the closest to Sayaka, and they even flirt in the free time events, so you as the player presume that she must be the love interest and sidekick in the story. Stories with mysteries often give the main character or detective a sidekick, so that the detective can tell their ideas to the sidekick and thus the audience. Sayaka goes as far as to call herself your assistant to rub that expectation in your face. But I love how they play with this expectation by having Makoto end up being the sidekick to Kyoko, who is the actual detective. Sayaka, to me, is really well written in hindsight. She is the ultimate pop idol and sort of represents that industry's manufacturing of stars. They try to manufacture these young people into these perfect people, or as Makoto points out, dolls. You can tell that the pressure to be perfect has had a real influence on Sayaka. When you first meet her, she's always happy, polite, optimistic, composed. The only thing that makes her #quirky is her little running gag where she guesses your thoughts and then tells you that she's psychic, but then says, "Kidding, I just have good intuition." Honestly, Sayaka could have gotten into the school as the ultimate clairvoyant. Her success rate is 100%. Hero, you fucking disgrace. She starts to let down these walls slightly after seeing that her band members were in some sort of danger. She shows herself to be genuinely scared and panicking, and then makes the radical decision to try and kill someone to get out. I love how Sayaka clearly seems to be a critique of the idol industry. The perfect persona she's been taught to act like all this time, gradually taking a hold on her. How she feels like her career as an idol is her entire life, and the fact that the thought of losing it all after all her hard work literally drives her to try and kill a person. Another thing I really like about Sayaka is how secretly intelligent she is. She has her amazing intuition, which shows how good she is at reading people, and she is able to target Leon because she knows that he's a horny bastard who would show up. I also love the way she manipulated the way Makoto cares about her. She set up the murder to clearly blame Makoto, since she knew that he's just so passive and kind that he would end up letting her get away with it.
I'm John Cena!
Sakura is just really nice. She's not the most complex or deep character, but I love her and she's my friend.
I hate to have to ask, but just to be sure, Sakura's me. Right.
Firstly, Sakura is the perfect example of how the Danganronpa franchise plays with expectations of gender. Chihiro is another obvious example of this, but many characters in Danganronpa play with gender in more subtle ways. Sakura is the ultimate martial artist, and she is buff. My god, look at those muscles, she's a force of nature. Her lifelong goal is to become the strongest person in the world, and while this is an incredibly huge goal, you can tell that she's serious about it and is really on her way to achieving it. In the main story, she does seem a little bit one note. She's best friends with Hina, which I went into more detail about in my last video essay, but in general conversation, she mainly just focuses on topics of training and how much she likes protein drinks. Her character becomes much more interesting to me in the 4th chapter, when it gets revealed that Monokuma was blackmailing Sakura into being a spy. Sakura's job was to kill someone if anyone else was taking too long, or if it looked like a murder wasn't going to happen. But Sakura ends up turning her back on Monokuma and deciding to fight the mastermind with everyone else, since she had become friends with everyone who was left. Again, I go into a lot more detail of this chapter in my last video. Sakura's sacrifice was really noble and made me so damn upset. And she was hugely important to the overall story, as her suicide note is the thing that ended up unifying the remaining cast and marked a very important turning point in the game. I feel bad putting her this far down on the list, given how much I love her, but I personally don't think she has as much depth and development as some of the other characters. Here's just another aside, these characters are so good and I love them so much, that being like 8th or 9th on the list is still amazing in my eyes. Moving on.
I say whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe.
Talking about Taka always makes me super annoyed and slightly angry because he had so much potential.
I have no idea what's going on anymore. Could such a heinous villain really be innocent?
Taka began the story being really fucking annoying. I remember thinking that he shouldn't be called the ultimate moral compass, but rather the ultimate teacher's pet. I thought his character was completely ridiculous because no one is actually that attached to the school rules and so intense about them. But he really grew on me. He immediately stepped into a leadership role, which is what the group really needed, and after he died, the group dynamic always felt a little bit off. But what really drew me to Taka, apart from his friendship with Mondo, which I've discussed before, was when I did his free time events. I really loved and related to his ideals after discussing them with him. I felt him jump up this list in my heart. It starts off with Makoto calling Taka a genius, which Taka really dislikes. He says that being a so-called genius means to him that you are just naturally talented without having to put in any effort. Taka sees himself as just an ordinary person, and growing up, thought you had to be a so-called genius to amount to anything in life. He decided that this belief is bullshit and wanted to prove to himself and to others that no matter who you are or where you come from, if you put in the effort, you can succeed. I found this to be incredibly admirable of him, and felt that I really understood why he takes his education so seriously now. This is the potential I was talking about. I heard somewhere that originally Taka was supposed to be one of the survivors at the end, instead of Hero, and gah, I wish that had happened. The end of Taka's arc felt so rushed and horribly done that it almost ruined his character for me. So after Mondo's execution, Taka is understandably traumatized. His first and only friend just got killed in such a brutal way and he completely shuts down. After a while, Alter Ego is able to recreate what Mondo would say to him, and this genuinely heartwarming moment happens. And this is where it all goes wrong. For some reason, rather than having a nice moment of closure before slowly moving on, his hair turns fucking white and he just goes insane. Like, what the actual fuck happened? He gets even more obnoxious and weird and then gets killed, so what the fuck was the point of setting him up to have a great character arc and then just turn him insane and kill him? Gah! I wish I could rant about this all day, but I think I'm just gonna move on now.
That is not correct. Because according to the encyclopedia...
I think that Makoto is a really decent protagonist. He's a really good fit for this game.
No, that's wrong!
He's enough of a blank slate that the player can easily put themselves in his shoes, but he's got enough personality to be interesting and show some good development throughout the story. Considering how over the top and ridiculous Danganronpa characters can be, especially for the first game, it was so important to have a protagonist who's easy to relate to. Makoto's insecurities about not having a talent and only getting into Hope's Peak through pure luck are very relatable. I think that most people have felt not good enough in a new situation, when you go into a job and everyone knows what they're doing and are better than you at it. It can be very intimidating and make you put yourself down. Or is that just me? Makoto's insecurities are made clear from the start, but I never felt like he was pushing it in my face. You could always tell it was weighing on his mind and clearly making him overthink himself and lose confidence. However, Makoto hits his lowest point quite early on. After the first chapter, when not only has his closest friend and possible love interest died, but she also tried to set him up. After overcoming his pain, he begins to come into his own, little by little, and is always an important component in the trials. As he becomes closer with the others, he gains confidence in himself without losing his kind nature. And I love that his arc comes full circle by the end. After he is the main force in defeating Junko, the ultimate despair, the group decide as a whole to call him the ultimate hope. The process of him overcoming his inferiority complex around not having a talent, or not deserving to be there, being completed with all his friends who he had regarded as superior to him, giving him this title, just shows how much he has grown in confidence, and I think it's a lovely moment.
Two bros chilling in the hot tub, 5 feet apart 'cause they're not gay.
Lots of people don't really like Mondo, but I honestly think his character is really well written, and he is a great deconstruction of the pressures of masculinity and the dangers of society's views on gender roles.
What? That's kinda weird as shit, isn't it?
I've already spoken in depth about Mondo, so I'm going to keep his bit quite brief as to not repeat myself. Mondo is the highest killer on this list, so that must say enough about how sympathetic I find his motives. The game really takes the time to explain his backstory after the trial, and knowing about his past really helps him seem like a whole person. I love how he starts off being almost antagonistic. Makoto's first impression of Mondo is fear, then Mondo literally punches Makoto in the face. But despite his super macho, foul-mouthed, delinquent persona, he comes to all the morning meetings, helps us with the investigation of new flaws, and defends Chihiro when Byakuya is being a bitch. The way he tries to cheer up Chihiro by making him a promise as a man shows that he has a good heart buried in there somewhere. Again, if you want a more full analysis of Mondo's character, check out my video on the Chapter 2 case. Woo! To be honest, I've already spoken quite in depth about the whole of the top 5. I really didn't think this through. I'll just be making general points and talking about the things I forgot to mention from now on.
Happy birthday, Raven! Okay, soon.
Hina is so damn lovely, and I want to be her friend so badly. I swear, I think Hina could actually motivate me to exercise properly, and that's impressive by itself.
It's death. Death for the one that killed Sakura.
While her personality isn't as over the top as others in the game, I still quite enjoy spending time with her in her free time events. I liked hearing about her goal to swim at the Olympics, and how she just honestly loves training and challenging herself. While I can't really relate to her love of sports, it was really nice getting to know Hina through what she's passionate about. Hina was like a good rock character, if you know what I mean. Like, she's always been one of the characters who really makes an effort to collaborate with the group and encourage everyone to stick together and become friends, rather than suspecting each other like crazy. She always acts true to herself, she stands up for her friends and calls people out on their bullshit. But it's not all roses. She hits her lowest moment in Chapter 4 after Sakura dies. It crushes her to know that her best friend would choose to end her own life, and the complete despair she feels pushes her to do something drastic and try to get us all killed. She was the most distressed she had ever been during this chapter. Even before Sakura died, it must have been so hard for her to listen to everyone distrusting and talking shit about her friend, and you can tell how helpless she feels when she almost begs them to tell her how she can make them trust Sakura again. Even after the emotional trauma she goes through in Chapter 4, she is able to find a sense of peace with Sakura's real suicide note, which tells of Sakura's sacrifice and how she just wanted everyone to be friends and work together. And she moves past the despair she felt in order to put faith in her other friends and help them all escape together. Honestly, I'm so glad Hina lived to the end. She brings so much positivity to the group, and while she didn't grow an amazing amount, her character had some ebbs and flows and felt very natural and grounded to me.
Is there anything better than pussy? Yes, a really good book.
Byakuya is a dickhead, and I love it.
Ugh, that tastes awful.
He's one of those people who just love to hate. And I am personally a massive fan of the antagonist's reluctant friend trope in media. I love that weird banter and uneasy mutual respect that can only come from this trope. Byakuya was also a huge part of pretty much all the chapters. He's always up to something, whether he's preaching about how everyone's his enemy in the first chapter, disturbing and altering the dead body in the second chapter, or finally deciding to defeat the mastermind in the fourth chapter. He always has a sort of mini-arc in each trial, when he goes in overly confident in his conclusion and gets more and more annoyed as other people, by that I mean mainly you and Kyoko, prove him wrong or think of things he didn't think of. It's nice to see this egotistical asshole who has never lost at anything in his life learn that, you know, he's not the smartest person in the world, he's not untouchable, and while he's still a million miles away from being humble, it still feels like he goes through a substantial change over the course of the game. I'm also going to go ahead and say that Byakuya's free time events might have been my favourite in this game. I don't know, but his arrogance made me really appreciate Makoto's inner monologue. He just views Byakuya as some idiot dickhead, and it makes me laugh so much. I also really like the event where Byakuya asks you to be his secretary once you get out. Makoto, of course, refuses because I don't think it's his lifelong dream to be a secretary to some rich kid. And Byakuya ends up saying that it was just a test and he didn't really mean it. But he doesn't take back his offer. It's clear that by this point, Byakuya has a clear respect for Makoto, even though he originally viewed him as a stupid commoner, and actually wanted Makoto to be a secretary. Given how highly he thinks and talks of himself, the fact that Makoto refused his offer must have hurt. I'm not saying I like to see people hurt, but Byakuya needs it. He needs to be cut down to size. Some other quick things I loved about his character are how he hates being regarded as someone who just got lucky and was born in the right family. While he was lucky to be born into such a powerful company, in his free time events, he talks about how he had to compete with his many older siblings and use his smarts to beat them all and be named the family's successor. Also, his reaction to Junko telling him that the Sagami Empire is dead along with his family, this one hurt. And the way he overcomes this by saying, the Sagami family isn't dead because I am here and I'm gonna get out. That was lovely.
So basically, what I was thinking of was, oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
Words cannot express how much I love Chihiro.
Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Chihiro Fujisaki.
For a character who literally dies in the second chapter of the first game, I feel like Chihiro has had a really big influence on the franchise as a whole. He goes through a really impressive journey of self-discovery and self-improvement when he uses this horrific situation to motivate himself to address the things he's regretted in his life. He wanted to be himself. He wanted to break out of his facade. He started presenting as female as a sort of armour to protect him from outside pressure, but it ended up turning into a cage for him and only made him fall deeper into his self-hatred. While I was so fucking gutted when he died, I was at least happy he was able to lift a weight off his shoulders by telling someone his secret. And I'm sure just making the decision to change would have been half the battle for Chihiro's journey of self-acceptance. Also, speaking of his talent as the ultimate programmer, I'm so happy he was able to complete one of his long-term career goals of creating an AI program. Honestly, I feel like Chihiro can be underrated in terms of how strong and helpful he is to the group. This could be because most of his development happens off-screen, as does his creation of alter ego. But when you think about it, I'm sure programming is a very time-consuming and tedious process, so during this horrendous situation of being forced into a killing game, he not only overcomes his personal demons, but also creates a fucking AI program, which ultimately leads to some of the cast surviving. He always looked down on himself for being weak and not being able to help, and the fact that he was a huge factor in the defeat of the Mastermind I think is really great. I find his death much less sad now, because I know what he was able to achieve before he died, and I also feel that he is able to live on through alter ego. He obviously put his heart and soul into making alter ego, since it was his big passion project, as we learn in his free times. Chihiro's strength astounds and inspires me, so it should be no surprise how he's so high up on this list.
She like, you can't fuck with me, nobody can fuck with me, I'm so badass, don't fuck with me.
And finally, here she is, my number one, the ultimate detective herself, motherfucking Kyoko Kirigiri.
If you're not the killer, then why did you try to destroy the evidence?
Kyoko is great, and I could honestly ramble on about her all day. For someone who is extremely private and never really reveals much of her backstory, even in the free times, I do not for a second believe that the creators did not give her a backstory. Just because we don't know what she's been through, doesn't mean that it has no effect on her, because it clearly does. I also love the points she brings up in her free times. Makoto is overly focused on figuring her out. He wants to know everything about her past, and when she doesn't tell him, he feels that he still doesn't know her. But he does. I believe that you don't need to focus on every detail of a person's past to understand them. Kyoko is able to be open in a different way with Makoto. She shows him who she is now, and I cannot express how much I love the way she kind of teases him flirtily, or at least I perceive it as flirty. Also, it would feel very out of character for her to just suddenly start divulging all of her backstory to Makoto, given her secretive and mysterious personality. Saying all of this, we do eventually learn a tiny bit about her backstory in the final chapter of the game, when she tells Makoto that the reason she came to this school was to find her father, who was the principal. When you and Kyoko find his private room, and you think to use Kyoko's name as his computer password, you can see that Kyoko was shocked. She had the belief that her father didn't care about her and abandoned her and the rest of her family without a second thought. So seeing the picture he had of her and the fact that she was his password showed her that he did love her and regret leaving. As I've said earlier, since Kyoko is such a cool person who hardly ever shows emotion, when she does, it's so effective. It happens in chapter 4 when she's annoyed at Makoto, and it happens again here when she asks you to leave once they find the bones of her father. She also gives off a sense that she didn't come just to investigate her father, but she was really hoping that they could reunite and he'd tell her that he didn't want to leave. But again, none of this is said outright. A reason why I love Kyoko so much is because everything is so subtle. You have to analyse every little thing she does and really think about her in depth to get a sense of who she is. Almost like you have to do some detective work of yourself to understand the ultimate detective. The last thing I want to mention is this: the pot noodle head sprite. That is all. Thanks so much for listening to me rant and ramble on about these characters for so long. If you have similar or drastically different opinions, let me know. Hopefully sometime next week I'll be moving on to the second game. My god, I'm so excited to replay it. I think I'll be following the same pattern of videos as well. I'll start off with 2 or 3 case video essays, and then go on to speaking about the characters of that game. Thanks again for watching, hope you enjoyed. Bye!